Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop. This is a cabinet scraper and this is a card scraper. This scrapes cards and that scrapes cabinets. Let's dive in. The card scraper is a fantastic tool for working in weird and difficult grains. Even around this knot where things are getting in the way, I can come at this from any angle and still get a really nice, clean, smooth surface. Because they can bend, I can hit a little spot with that radius and I can really come in and work little areas and get rid of the tear out. Being able to clean up little areas is very nice, but what if I need to do a large surface like a tabletop or this bench top? The card scraper can do the whole tabletop if you want to. And really, after just a few passes, this is starting to get hot. My thumbs is burning. You can easily fix that with a refrigerator magnet. You just slap it on there and it will protect your thumbs. It keeps the heat away from it just a little bit. The problem is they tend to slide around and they're just not the best solution. They work, but they're not amazing. It's around this point that the cabinet scraper enters the chat. The cabinet scraper has an angle to it, so you would think that's the front, but honestly, this is the front. And so what you can do is grab it here, and you grab it kind of like you would hold a card scraper, but it's got handles on it, and then you just start scraping. And look at that. We're getting these beautiful curls that just eject right out of the plane. And I can scrape a very large surface very quickly. Oh, silky, buttery smooth. This is the Stanley number 80. Stanley made hundreds of thousands of these, if not millions of them. They're incredibly simple tools. There are 3 screws that go in, there's 1 iron, there's this bar, and a cast piece of metal with a sole that's semi-flat. It doesn't even really need to be close to flat, it just needs to be flat-ish. Also, with cabinet scrapers, the plates are a lot thicker. Because you're not using your thumbs to try and bend them, you're using screws on this, they can bend a lot thicker item and you can get a larger area that'll work. So rather than 0.032, which is the most common regular card scraper, these usually go up to 0.05 or more. Because it actually flexes the surface, it's only making contact with a little bit. And that's why these curls are only an inch to 1.25 inches wide. They're not huge curls that you're cutting out. I want to cut more. I want wider. So if the number 80 isn't enough, Stanley said, okay, let's bump it up one and go 81. And this one has rosewood sole. The iron isn't wider. It's actually a little bit smaller. But the screw on this doesn't flex the plate. The entire surface of the plate is now in contact with work. So theoretically, I should be able to get a curl that's the full width of this wide. In practice though, it's actually, well, kind of difficult to do that. You still get curls that are only 1.5 inches wide because the plate kind of flexes around the wooden sole. The wooden sole seems like a good idea with the burnishing of the wood on wood effect is great, and that honestly feels really good. The problem is it raises it up a good bit and the handles get a little higher and everything starts to get a rotation on there, and most people would just prefer to use the metal on wood. And you'll come across a lot of these 81s that are missing the sole altogether. But Stanley said, you know what, that's not good enough, so we're going to jump up from the 81 to the 82, and they came out with the number 12. You thought they'd make an 82? No, this actually came out before the 80, because it has bells and whistles. And this brings us back to the card scraper. I've taught dozens and dozens of classes on how to use a card scraper, and the most common problem that people have, and the one thing that usually fixes it, is how it's held. You don't want the card being flat down to the work. You don't want it upright. You want it in between. You want to start high and then slowly lower it until the blade engages, and that's where you want to be working with it. Also, you want your thumbs close together and down by the bottom, so you're putting pressure right on that bend to get yourself a nice curl. And it all depends on what angle you turned your burr to. If your burr is down lower, you need to lower your card scraper a little bit. If it's up higher, you need to raise your card scraper up a little bit. And that means that there's a variability to it depending upon where you sharpened that burr. And that's one of the problems with a lot of cabinet scrapers is there is no adjustability to it. But the Stanley 12 has this that's adjustable to both a positive angle and a negative angle. This way, if you're having problems with the blade engaging, you can actually change your angle until you get the exact spot where the burr is on your particular card. There are a few other minor benefits to it, but that's the big one, is being able to match the burr you have on your card to the angle you're cutting at. The problem is, this gets really expensive. It's got 2 nuts, the shaft, the body, the head, another nut, the pin that it's riding on, the 2 screws, the handle, the body, as well as the card. And there's just a lot in this that has to go to make it work. And this got relatively expensive. Whereas this was dirt cheap. It's 3 screws, a bar, a blade, and a hunk of metal. There's a reason for every one of these Stanley sold. They sold 10 to 20 of these. One of the biggest complaints of the 12 though is it uses a very wide cutter, and that wide cutter isn't bent. So you're using the full width of the cutter to make your shaving, which sounds great, but that requires a lot of force. You're really having to jam into this to get, and you have to have a really good blade on there in order for it to engage all the way across. And this actually gets to be a bit of a pain because it uses such a wide iron. So you know Stanley, they said we can fix this by counting, and rather than going to a 13, they decided to go to the 12 1/4. There's also a 12 1/2, which is also small, and these things are actually really hard to find. I've only come across a few of these. This one though was recently given to me, and I am in love with it. This is a 2 1/4. Very, very small and narrow, not very common to come by. They aren't that much more expensive, but they are kind of cute and little. All the adjustability, but with a narrow iron, even smaller than the Stanley 80. I actually don't even have an iron that will fit into this one. I would have to go and make one. But Stanley was willing to fix the problem by throwing another tool at it, and their catalog gets bigger. One of the other big differences is that a card scraper actually has a square edge. This is flat, 90 degrees to either face, whereas the cabinet scraper is actually not flat, but 45 degrees. Here you can see there's actually a bevel on the edge of this, and different manufacturers will tell you a different angle for that. And the reason different user manuals will tell you different angles is the angle really doesn't matter that much. Somewhere between like 30 degrees and 50 degrees will do you perfectly fine. You see, with a normal cabinet scraper, when you come in with a burnisher, you're actually going to be pushing and mushrooming this out and creating a burr on either side that's coming out. And the cool thing about that is you get 2 cutting edges for the price of 1. Great. The problem is you get this thin little burr that breaks off relatively quickly, and you find yourself moving around the card scraper quite a bit trying to find that new sharp spot because they wear out relatively fast. So what they say is, what if we took this edge and rather than making this tiny little burr sticking off of there, what if when we crush it down, we actually just bend over that tip, and that gives us more material behind the end of that little cutting burr. That burr is going to last longer. Now the downside is you only get 1 per edge, whereas with this you get 2 per edges. But it actually turns much faster and easier to work on because I can just come in and grind this off on the stone, push it down again, and create a new burr on here. And you can do that 4 or 5 times before you need to regrind this angle. So the 45 degree is a little more durable, a little faster to sharpen, but it only gives you 1 edge. And I still know people who will stick a regular card scraper in there. It doesn't have to be a thick beveled edge. You can do the 90 degree, in which case then you just turn it around and use other edges, and you have multiple edges you can stick in there. But most just stick with the angle for the cabinet scrapers and the 90 degree for the card scraper. Why? Because we're humans and we like doing weird things. And then if you really want to get into it, you can get what's called a card scraper holder or a card holder. And it's actually basically takes the place of your hands and puts a little curvature in there. Veritas sells them. Lots of people have made little renditions over there. I've got an old video making one. And what they do is they make it easier to hold so you're not bending it, you're just pushing it around. So if you have problems with flexing it, you don't have to worry about that. The card holder actually does that, and you can use the card scraper the way it is. It's kind of like a cabinet scraper, but it has no soul. And so that's why I say, if you want to do something more than what the card scraper will do, get yourself a number 80. There really is no reason to get one of these more fancy fangled ones. They do the job, but this is cheaper and efficient and does the job incredibly well. Not to mention you can pick one of these up antique for 20, 30, maybe 40 bucks, or you can even go buy a new one for around 50-ish. Kuhn's is a manufacturer of the green ones. They make one that's great because there's really nothing to it. It's just a hunk of metal, 3 screws and a plate on the back, slap a card scraper in there and you're good to go. I'll put a few links to those down below if you'd like to see them as well. The cool thing is they're really easy to set up. You set this down on a flat surface, you put the card scraper in here so that the bevel is on the back side of the plane and the hook is facing forward. You slide it down until it touches the bench top or tabletop or whatever it's on. It's nice and flat there. And then I can tighten up these 2 front screws, give them a little bit of a tweak so that they don't move around. And what now is it's just touching the work, but it's not really engaging. I take this screw and I wait until it engages and then give it a 1/4 turn or so. And now I got work on there. This screw on the back is basically your thumb pushing it in, but with a screw. You want a heavier cut? You crank it down a little more and it really bites in. You want a lighter cut? You back it off a little bit. And now you're just scratching the surface. Really light cuts. I'm not going to go into how to sharpen card scrapers and cabinet scrapers. I've got a pile of videos on those, and I'll leave links to those down below. And there are hundreds of other videos out there. It's one of those things that seems like it's really hard to get, and it can be really, really frustrating because it's just a simple, stupid piece of steel. But if you put a little bit of work into it and try a couple different methods, you'll find one that clicks for you. That's usually what I tell people is go try a couple different methods and see what's right for you. But most of the time, it comes down to the way you hold it. You want it to be at the right angle that you're pushing it forward. Don't try and lay it forward. Don't try and bring it back. Start with it at 90 degrees and slowly lean it forward until it's engaging right. Keep your thumbs close together and low, and it works. This is just a little simpler because you don't have to worry about that. It's at that angle that it's going to be at, and there's not much else you can do other than turn the screw down a little farther or back a little bit. The problem with the cabinet scraper is you can't really get into little areas, whereas with the card scraper you can get it anywhere you want. Or you can make really funky shapes and sizes to do all sorts of fun things. These ones all come from DFM Toolworks, which is actually the same company that makes the card scrapers I sell. So yes, if you'd like to get a card scraper, you can buy them on woodbywright.com. I'll leave links down below, as well as the thumb saver magnet. Okay, I guess that's too much of an advertisement. Back to the cabinet scraper. Isn't it pretty? So there you have it, the cabinet scraper. It can get really fancy and funky, or it can be really simple, because all it is a way to replace your thumbs. So I hope you like this. If you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, snide remarks, throw those in the comments down below, because I do read through all of them and answer as many of them as I can get to. Thank you. You may have noticed I didn't stop this video in the middle and talk about some game or mattress or other thing like that. No, I actually get to talk about what I want to talk about because of all those people over there. The patrons on Patreon are the ones that actually sponsor this channel, and I don't talk about them until the end of the video because all the good stuff is done. But honestly, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone over there because they're the ones who keep this channel going. They're the ones who sponsor it and allow me to keep doing things like this, and I want to say a huge thank you. Without you guys, we would not be here. So thank you for that. If you have any other questions, thoughts, throw them down below, and I think that'll do it for now. Until next time, have a wonderful day. The only downside is if you come to my shop for a class, I have to card you. Yeah, I know, my living is woodworking, and these things just help me scrape by.